Hi, welcome to Stencil Girl. I am excited to be here today. My name is Rae Missigman, and I'll be sharing my cyanotype technique with you. Now, I do have a faux cyanotype project over on Stencil Girl under the newest stencils, the vintage floral samplers. And this is a technique where we can create a faux cyanotype using our favorite printing plate, our stencils and masks, and acrylic paint, which is super nice because we already have most of those things in our mixed media toolkit. But I wanted to touch on how we can use the pre-treated papers and fabrics to create authentic cyanotypes using those same stencils and masks. And while we don't have time today to create a big project online together, I can walk you through on how to make the papers and fabric, and then hopefully you'll take the technique back to your studio and create something with them. I love to use the fabrics in my journals and my mixed media projects, so that is one thing that you can do with some of the things we'll create today. But I wanted to show you a couple other ways that you can use the cyanotype papers and fabric to create actual cyanotypes instead of faux with the paint. So here is some paper that I've cut into smaller squares because I like to use bits and pieces of my big stencils to create these little collage papers. And these turned out really cool. And that is using this student grade Sunprint nature print paper. And so the paper is exposed to the sunlight and goes through a chemical change, and then the images appear after you soak it in water. They appear right away, but the blue happens, the magic happens with the water. And then I also have some treated fabric that you can pick up in a store or online that is ready to make into a print in the sun. Now, I learned something today, and I'm glad I did it to share with you, that if you iron the fabric, it takes it back down to the bronzy color of when we're exposing the fabric to the sun. So while it wasn't the bright blue that it was a little bit ago, I don't hate it because it kind of grunges it up a little. But you can see the gorgeous print that you get from the mask that I added to the fabric. You can see this one's a little more blue because some of the mask must have been lifted a little. So a little bit of sunlight was in there. And so it wasn't a perfect print, but I'm okay with that and I like that. So let me show you how we're gonna do this on the fabric and the paper today. So a couple of the tools you're gonna wanna use are some clips. I'm just using some little binder clips. And I have gone to like my local dollar store and I've bought a couple frames just so that I could have the heavy duty chipboard and the lightweight piece of glass. You could use plexiglass as well to use to stabilize my print in the sun. You can weight it down, just know that whatever you use is going to block the sun. So that's where you're going to get that white impression. So let's start with the paper first. And these are usually packaged where they're protected from the sunlight or they would get exposed. So I just take a couple sheets out because these are already small. And I'm gonna lay them on, we'll do two here, on the cards on the chipboard. And you wanna work quickly if you're working your sunlight, which I have to be working on camera here. Otherwise, you'd wanna work where there was minimal exposure to light. And then I'm going to take one of the new vintage floral sampler stencils, and I'm gonna kind of position it where I am over both pieces of paper, but I'm just getting a portion of the stencil. And then I'm gonna add the glass on top, and I'm going to clip it just to keep it from moving in the sunlight. Now, you wanna clip it as much as you can around all the edges so that it's got a nice, firm stabilized compression on top of those sheets. Now I don't want to ruin my stencil over here, so I would have to grab a little bit deeper clip, which I could do, to make sure everything is nice and pressed down. The glass is pressed over the stencil and the paper. Now most, and you would follow the labels, most cyanotype papers and fabrics tell you to expose the paper or fabric to the sunlight for anywhere from 3 to 15 minutes. It's always best to err on the side of overexposure, because at least then you're getting the full print. Underexposure, you might not have great results. So I'm just going to let it expose here in the sun. I'm going to set my timer. This paper actually said to expose for about 2 minutes, so I will set the timer for 2 to 3 minutes and let it sit out here in the sun until the timer goes off, exposing it fully and allowing that chemical change to happen. Then we will take it back into the house and soak it in water, cool water, for about 1 minute. So this has been exposing for about 3 minutes, and you can see the paper has now turned more of a light blue to white. So we're going to go in and rinse it. You can see the paper is much lighter now. We're going to take the clips off and get these prints submerged in the water. Take the stencil off. Look at that beautiful reed. So gorgeous. And then we put it in the water to soak for about 1 minute. So I once again will set the timer for about 1 minute and then pull these out and lay them flat to dry. All right, so now that my timer has gone off for 1 minute, I'm going to take these out and lay them on a cloth to dry. So I'm just laying out a little piece of paper towel here because I want these to lie flat to dry. And then I'm actually going to transfer them to a room that's a little darker so that they don't continue to expose, and let them dry thoroughly. But look at that clean, beautiful stencil reed. Okay, so let's try that again with the pre-treated fabric sheets. This is by Jacquard, and we're going to be doing the same thing we did on the paper. So this is pre-treated. It's blue in color to start. I have 2 pieces of chipboard here lined up because my stencil is big. So I'm just going to lay it over the center. Let me move this so you can see a little better. And I'm just going to put it on the chipboard near an edge here. Actually, I'll center it up so I can put the glass on there. And then I'm going to be using 2 masks. I'm going to use this leafy garden mask, which I just love. And then the cone flower mask. I'm going to let that overlap a little. And then I'm going to put both pieces of glass on. And I'll just need to make sure I clip it where these 2 pieces meet really well, and then all along the edges. And just like the paper, I'm going to continue to clip all the way around the edges to make sure everything is nice and secure before we take it outside to expose it. So I have the fabric clipped here, and I've positioned it where it can be in the sun. And I'm going to set my timer. It says to expose it for 3 to 15 minutes, so we will see how long it takes. The bluish color of the fabric will start to turn a bronzy brown color, similar to this chipboard, as it begins to make that chemical reaction. I'm hoping I have enough pressure on the glass where these 2 pieces meet that it holds those masks down really nicely. So let's set the timer for, say, 6 minutes to start. Again, it's better to overexpose than to underexpose, and see if we can start to see this fabric turn bronze. So I've checked on my print at the 3-minute mark, and the fabric is definitely starting to get a little less blue and leaning towards a bronzy color. It's hard to tell in the sunlight, but it is not yet bronze. So we're going to let it keep reacting. So we've just passed the 6-minute mark, and the fabric is now fully bronze in color. Okay, I have my dish of water. I have brought the fabric in. You can see, the glass is making a glare, that it's more bronze. So let's check this out. I've taken the glass off, so now I can remove my masks. And wow, that is beautiful. Oh my goodness, so beautiful. So let's take a look at this. You can see how much more bronze the fabric is. Here's the edge I was talking about on the stencil or mask. This is beautiful. So let's see what's going to happen when we put it in our bath. And I have a pretty small dish here because I'm working on camera, but you can see the water is turning a little. That's the chemical coming out of the fabric. And we're just going to continue to soak this for a bit and rinse it after. So once I've kind of soaked it in the bath for a good minute or two, I will then take this over to my sink, dump it out, and rinse this, and then let it dry flat. Because now I know, based on my last example, that I can't iron it. That's just water from my fingers, but you can see what it did when I ironed it. It got that bronzy look back. So we don't want to iron it. Let's rinse it for a little bit more. Look at that beautiful, beautiful pop of color. And that turned out really well. The mask was nicely compressed by the glass, and that's the difference between weighting it down with, say, a rock or a paperweight and putting some glass over it. So you'll want to run to your local dollar store and get a couple cheap frames and take them apart to do that. So I'm going to take all of this over to my sink and rinse it, and then I'll meet you back here. So I've gone ahead and rinsed this in clear water. I did wring it out, and I've kind of pressed it flat on some paper towels to let it dry until I can do a little more research on the discoloration from the ironing. But I'm certain it had something to do with either the oils on the iron or the heat or something, because it doesn't specifically say on the packaging that I can't iron it. It just says rinse and dry, but that's okay. I now have a really cool grungy piece as well, and I like that just as much. So we'll have to dig into that a little bit. Also, be sure to check out the faux cyanotype on Stencil Girl, because we do all have our mixed media tools, whether it's a gel plate or a printing plate or something in our acrylics. So it's a nice alternative to working with the cyanotype treated papers and fabrics. And then of course, check out the paper as well. You'll get some different color variations, and all together, these make some really beautiful papers and fabrics to work with in our mixed media projects. So I hope you had fun with this. I hope you will check out the other projects, and I can't wait to see what you create.